said, yes. Said, I got some bad news today. I said, well, I was right there when she died. Said, that's not all of it. Your baby's dying too. I said, no. Yes. Said, doctor there just left and said, I'll let you come to the hospital. It's dying now. We'll keep her for a minute dying. I couldn't stand it no longer. I got two men sitting in an old truck. We went out there to the hospital. And I went in. Doc said, you can't go in there. I said, yes, I can. No, you can't. Said, Billy, you got to think about Billy Paul. Said, she's got meningitis. She's contracted that from her mother. And said, if you go in there, you might take it to your boy. I said, Doc, I must go. He said, you can't. So he set me down in the room. As soon as he got away, I slipped in anyhow. I went down there to the little hospital. And there, when I walked into the room, I'll never forget it. There laid my little 8-month-old darling, little Sherry, laying there just suffering so hard. Her little leg was moving up and down like that, fat. It looked like her little hand was waving at me goodbye. I looked at her, she was suffering so hard. I said, Sherry, you know where your daddy, honey? I shooed the flies out of her eyes. And when she looked at me, she was suffering so hard that one of those little baby blue eyes had crossed. I never could stand to see a cross-eyed child, man. I've never seen one pass the platform, but what was healed? You know, sometimes it takes a crush in the bring forth the fragrance, is that right? I've seen 400 and something cross-eyed children healed in 6 months. Oh, when I see a cross-eyed child, I think of my little Sherry laying there. She's suffering so hard. And she looked at me, her little eyes crossed, and her little hand tried to wave at me. And I said, no, Daddy, honey, and her little lips trying to speak to me like it was goo to me, and it was quivering. She was dying. I put my hand over her, and I said, oh, God, please, God, don't take her. You took my wife, you took my daddy, you took, oh, God, isn't there forgiveness in your great heart? I said, please, dear God, please spare my baby. I put my hand down there, and I said, won't you do it, Lord? I looked up, looked like a black sheet began to unfold and coming down. Oh, I know she was gone. I looked at her and I thought, oh my, if I had to live over again, that would never be trash. I don't care who's everywhere. I don't know if I could just go back. I'd never listened to another thing anybody told me. I'd listened to God and Him alone. I'd listened to Him. I looked at her and I know she was going. I was saying, oh, I just sweetheart, the baby was hard again. You won't be hard. Wait a minute. I said, someday, Daddy, come up home. I said, you wait after that when I come through the street. I placed my hand over her leg. I said, Lord, you gave her, you take it away. No, you slayed me, yet I'll trust you. You're still my baby. I love you. I'm not a baby, but when I think about it, it tears me to pieces. I said, oh God, how can you take that precious thing from my life? I looked down again and I said, not my will. Let thine be done. God, if you slay me, I'm just going to trust you. I said, God bless you, honey. Goodbye, Sherry. You're all touching Mother's arms. The few hours up there in the casket where she's laying now. And someday, Daddy will see you again. I stepped back. Every bone in it seemed like went to pieces. I shrunk to the floor. The angels of God come down and touch her little soul to be with her mother. She went to meet Mother. Tucked her little helpless body in the arms of her dear mother. We went out there to the graves of Miriam. Reverend Smith from the Methodist Church walked up there and took a handful of dirt. Said ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Them old clods began to beat on top of that casket as it went out in the grave. I raised up, I couldn't stand it. Way back up on the side of the hill with some big cedar trees. I heard the wind whistling through there. It seemed like a song that there's a land beyond the river that they call the sweet forever, and we only reach that shore by faint degrees. One by one they gave the portal there to dwell with the immortal. Someday they'll ring those golden bells to the deep. Last Easter years ago, her old son there, Billy and I, we go to the grave early in the morning. Had a little bundle of flowers under his arms. I said, let's go visit Mama's grave. We were going along there with the flowers. Coming day, I took off my hat. The little fellow took off his hat. I heard it chuckle. I said, don't cry, sonny. I put my arm around him. We set it down over the side of the grave. I ran over here, laid Hope Amelia Branham and darling daughter, Sharon Rose. I said, sweetheart, the really reason we're kneeling here, Billy, in Jerusalem, there's an empty grave this morning. That's right. And your mother died, and him who rose again. I said, someday we'll see Mama and Sissy again in a better land. After my life lived there, I went home, I tried to go to work. I had thousands of dollars in debt, and frankly, on that bill just recently got out of it. My father died, no insurance. We couldn't afford insurance and nothing, and there he was. By the way, I'm not an insurance person. My insurance, one guy came to me the other day and said, I want to sell you some insurance. And I said, listen, don't talk to me about that. I said, I have insurance. He said, oh, you have insurance? I said, yes, sir. He said, what is it? I said, blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. He said, that'll not put you in a grave up here. I said, I'm not worried about getting in there. That'll bring me out. I said, I'm worried about coming out, not going in. I said, that's right. I ain't got nothing against insurance. It's all right, you see. That's all right, but some people's insurance poor. That's right, but I'll tell you, insurance, you collect on it right now. Just now, the Holy Spirit of God is right. The assurance of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and we'll come out again. Then, when I was there, paying all those debts one morning, I remember getting up on a post. I was working for an electrical company, trying the public service company of Indiana. I was working real early one morning. I was taking down some taps. I was thinking, on the hill far away, stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. I noticed the sun coming up, shining against the telephone pole, or the electric pole, and that cross arm looked like the picture of someone hanging on the cross, wiggling out there on the hill, the shadow. I said, yes, it was my sins that put him there. It was my disobedience that put him there. He died for me. I become so, I could see my wife going, but I couldn't see that baby going. I just couldn't do it. And I said, oh, God, why did you take that precious little thing from me? Here I am left alone in the world, me and the boy to wander around together. I said, why did you take her, Lord? I got so worked up. So I said, Sherry, honey, Daddy's coming to see you this morning. I pulled off her rubber glove. Here was 2300 running right by me. Break every bone in your body. I said, I'm going crazy. I pulled my glove. I said, Sherry, Daddy's coming to see you. I can't stay away from you any longer. I said, God, I hate to be a coward, but I can't stand it. My heart's breaking. I can't stand it. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on the ground. How I ever got out from there, God only knows. Now I believe if that gift hadn't been foreordained to put him there, I'd have been gone right there, because I made up my mind I was going to take my life as a suicide case. I lost my mind. I was going crazy. And I went home, I said, oh, I put my tools in the car. I said, I'm going home, I'm going crazy. And I went home and stayed with Mama that day, and that night I was going around the house, and I picked up the nail, and as soon as I went in, I bashed it back in the little old room there, a little old fireplace, a little old stove sitting there, a little old cot. I stayed right there at the home. It wasn't, I didn't want to go nowhere else. There wasn't very much there, that old furniture, but she and I lived together with it. It was ours, and it was a whole lot. That's right. It ain't the value of anything, the way you look at it. That's right. And I'd always lived together here. Her, she loved it. She kept it clean. And I want to stay right here with her till I die, too. And I was staying there. And I'd come in every night, and I'd look around at her things, and I would lay down. That night when I come in, I would look through these letters. And the first one had a letter that said, Miss Sharon Rose Branham. Her little Christmas day, the 80 cents. And I looked at her, oh, God. I knelt down before her. I said, oh, God, I can't stand it. I'm going to die. So please forgive me when you always haunt me, Lord. Please have mercy on my poor, sinful soul. I said, don't let me be. I'm down to myself wild here. I said, I can't stand it losing my baby and all I got. I said, it's just asking me day and night. And I was praying. I got real sleepy. A haze come up on me. I went to sleep. I dreamed that I southwest, and I was walking down to the side of the prairie, as it used to be. I've seen an old prairie schooner. The wheel was broken, and laying down sideways, and I was singing that song, or with me. The wheel on the wagon is broken. Of course, that's our broken family, you see. And it won't run no more. And I was whistling like that, the wheel on the wagon's broken, going along. And I stepped out to the side of that wagon with the most beautiful, blonde-headed girl I ever seen. She's dressed in snowy white, her pretty little blue eyes are shining, her blonde hair. She said, "Hello, Dad." I tipped my head up, "How do you do, miss?" And she said, "Hello, Dad." I said, "Dad, I beg your pardon." She smiled, and she said, "Well, don't you know me?" I said, "Well, lady, you're as old as I am. How can I be your father?" She said, "Don't you know you're teaching, Dad? You teach immortality. See, I don't believe there'll be little babies in heaven. If they're resurrected little babies, there'll always be little babies. If they're real old people that resurrect, on a cane or a crutch, to be that way, immortality don't grow. We'll be one age, one thing forever. We'll be at one age, I believe, with all my heart, about the age of Jesus. That just might be a thought, but I don't, immortality, if it's resurrected, a little baby that big, it will always be that way. I believe we'll be one age. I'll be no old or young. We'll be just in that middle age right there forever. I believe man and women, like God, when He didn't tell Eve she was a little bitty thing growed up, or Adam, He just made them in His own image, and that's the way He'll do it again. A full-grown statue of people. And she said, "Don't you remember your teaching of immortality?" And I said, "Oh, who are you?" And she said, "Down on earth, I was your little Sherry." I said, "Sherry, that's not you, honey?" She said, "Yes, it is, Daddy." She said, "Where's Billy Paul, my brother?" I said, "Well, honey, I don't understand." She said, "Mother's looking for you." I said, "Where's Mother at?" She said, "Up at your home, your new home." I said, "My home?" I said, "Honey, I never had a home." I said, "Branham don't have a home." She said, "But Dad, you got one here." And I turned to look, and there was a great mansion, glory of God coming up. I said, "Is that her?" She said, "Yeah, Mother's up there waiting for me." I said, "All right." She said, "I'm going to wait for Billy. I'll stand right here, and I'll be up after a while." I said, "Mother wants to see you." I took off as hard as I could running. When I got up there, I started running up the big steps like that, and I was coming walking out over the steps. Here she comes. In all of her beauty, white robe on, dark hair hanging down her arms, reaching out. I run to her and grabbed her hands and knelt down. I said, "Oh, honey." I said, "I can't stand it no longer. I'm just about to go wild. Since you've left," she said, "I've seen all well." She said, "Promise me something." I said, "Well," she said, "Promise me you won't worry no more." And I said, "I've seen Sherry, honey. Didn't our girl make a beautiful woman?" Said, "Yes." Said, "She's waiting for Billy, isn't she?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Promise me you won't worry, will you?" Said, "Sharon and I are better off than you." "Well, honey," she said, "just promise me you won't worry." And I said, "All right, I won't worry no more." And I raised up like this and looked around, and she said, "Will you sit down?" I looked at a great big chair sitting there. And I looked at that chair, and I looked back at her. She said, "I don't know what you're thinking." And here's what it was. While we was preaching, we didn't have them, just an old hickory bottom chairs we was living in, a house. And I preached, passed the night, worked all day long with an air hammer, pick and shovel. I come in at night, and I wanted to buy one of them chairs, and, Mars chairs, you call them, whatever it is, lounge chairs. And I wanted to buy one, they was for sale in for $15.95. And I used to pay $1 down and $1 a week to pay for it. And I got one and moved it into the house. I sat there at night and just relaxed when I come in and study the Bible till I go to sleep. And one day, while I come in and I got it done, I couldn't make the payment that week. The next week passed, I couldn't make the payment, and they sent me to come get my chair. And so I just couldn't make the payment. I just couldn't do it. So I told her, I said, "You call them up and tell them to come get it, honey." And so I remember coming in that evening. She baked me a cherry pie. I love cherry pie so well. I went in, she'd had some of the boys that dig some fishing worms, so I could go fishing and setting out. She was a real girl. And so she sat out there and we come in and eat supper. I think she was extremely happy or seemed to be putting on something. She had a big cherry pie. And I was even eating after it, I kind of petitioned something. So I said, let's go in the front room. She said, oh, let's go fishing first down the river. I said, no, let's go in the front room. And she put her arm around me. When I walked in the room, the chair was gone. She started crying. She put her head over my shoulder. She said, I'm sorry, honey, I tried everything to borrow $2 even. But said I couldn't do it. We paid about $10 on it. And said I couldn't do it. We just had to let it go. And then she looked at me and she said, you thinking of that? And I said, yeah. She said, but sweetheart, there'll never be nobody coming to get this one. It's already paid for. It's belongs to you. Said, you've been so tired. You've been preaching and praying for the sick. I wasn't praying for the sick then. So I know that sometimes my going will probably be to the platform praying for the sick. That's been the thing that helped you get that. She said, but you'll never come take this. Said, it's yours. Now sit out and rest a while. One of these days, friends, I know I'm going day and night. I'm trying all that I can do to live and do what's right before God. One of these days, I'm going home to rest. That's right. One of these times you'll get the paper and won't you stop and sing only me.